Welcome to Mozer Works, Inc. We're a full-time historic restoration company that exclusively specializes in restoring old windows and entrance doors. Our mission is to help homeowners and building owners save their old historic windows and doors. We do that in a number of means. Mostly we do a full restoration, but we also offer other services that include helping people mechanically tune up those antiquities. And then occasionally we also do just some partial restoration work. But most of the work we do is full restoration, so we're bringing those pieces back to life and making sure they work the way they were designed to work years ago. I look at us as masters of three primal areas. One is we're master old window mechanics. The second is we're professional glazers. And the third is expert painters. This past spring, we did a wonderful project in the Mount Pleasant district of Washington, D.C. It's a historic area. A Victorian-style row house in Mount Pleasant. We helped them restore 7 old historic windows. They were built in the early 1900s. We're going to show you some shots of those and talk about how we went about that process. Our process for full restoration takes 8 to 10 weeks, and that's after we've removed those pieces from the home. So we take the old historic windows out of their openings and bring them back to the shop where we do our full restoration process. When we do full restoration, our clear intention is to make sure these things last for decades, and we hope that could be maybe another 80, 60, or 100 years, depending on how well they're maintained and how much exposure they have to Mother Nature. We do all our work from the inside of the house. We have to abide by a number of things. One important is the EPA Lead Law. It's called RRP, Restoration, Renovation, and Painting Law, and it has to deal with the containment of lead paint. We're certified by EPA. We've been registered and licensed with them as certified to deal with lead dust and deal with it carefully and professionally. And that involves a whole process of setting up and cleaning up. Setting up to contain the lead dust, and then cleaning up appropriately, and lastly, doing a lead dust verification to make sure there's no lead left at the home, at the window area, or in the building. One of the key things we need is our clients have to move their personal effects away. That's crucial. We're working on the windows from the inside, as I mentioned before, but we need a good amount of space for one of our window mechanics to get on a ladder and work fairly robustly on that window area. The disassembly of the windows takes about 4 hours to do the entire process, and that includes the EPA Lead Law requirement. That includes removing and freeing up those sashes, taking out some of the stops, specifically the sash stop, which is a guide for the lower sash, and the parting stop, which is a stop that divides the two sashes, the upper and the lower. Once we have those two stops out and we've cut the cords or cut the chains, we can remove those sashes and get to that frame, and we'll strategically clean that frame and deal with the lead paint issue. Afterwards, we'll do some sanding and use a linseed oil as opposed to primers or paints. We'll use linseed oil to seal up the wood pores that are exposed. So some of the areas we're going to take back to original old growth wood, so we can make sure that those sashes are going to glide up and down without any friction. The sashes we bag up. We put in plastic bags and we tape that up tight so we don't drag lead dust through your home or through the building. And we also take a lot of production notes at the job site when we're doing disassembly, because it's the relationship of those moving parts to their fixed frames that's really important. When we leave the job site after doing disassembly, those windows openings are ready to receive the working sashes again and their accessories, and they're going to work really well. And that includes cleaning up all the debris that we generated, but making sure we didn't leave any lead dust. Besides the disassembly of the windows, another key thing is we're going to weatherize the openings. We cut plastic, typically use 6mm polyethylene sheeting if we're just going to weatherize. We cut plastic oversized to make sure it's pulled taut and neatly contains the entire area, and it can prevent any wind or rain or snow from entering into the building. Sometimes in our projects, given their location or the elevation of the windows, it's necessary for us to secure the windows and not just weatherize. If we do that, minimally it'd be something like plywood, but occasionally we've had some clients who wanted something a higher grade like plexiglass. Next, we're taking those sashes and our accessories back to the shop. In the shop is where we actually do our restoration work. and that takes us 8 to 10 weeks. What we do is strip the sash down. So before we do that, we take them up into a lead room, and it's a room that's hermetically sealed so we don't let lead dust escape out of there. And in that lead room, we've got a downdraft table, we've got a steamer box where we steam the sashes, and we've got our tools. And in that room, first of all, we size the sashes, the relationship of those moving parts to the frame. And after we do the sizing, we're going to label all our sashes. At the same time, we'll take off any hardware that needs to be removed. And depending on the size of the actual glass panes, we may or may not remove those glass panes first. We cook our sashes in a steam box. We might put them in that box repeated times to gently break the paint bond that's been applied to them over the course of 60, 80, 100, 120 years. We want to make sure we save all the glass we can. Glass is fragile, even if you're expert glazers as we are. We try to save all that old glass. Sometimes it's historic, sometimes it's a mixture of old and new, but we try to reuse as much as we can. It's inevitable that some of it accidentally breaks, even after we've taken great care and lots of time to try to extract it. We'll try to reuse as much as we can, but that can be an issue in one of our projects, and we deal with that using a glass inventory. We qualify it under fluorescent lights in our shop after we've cleaned it up really well, and then we provide a grading and send that to our clients to take a look and see if they want to reuse all of it or if it's opportunistic to maybe change out some of the poorer pieces if they're highly scratched or have some other deficiencies that we wouldn't recommend their reuse. Our clients can take a look and make a decision about how much that glass they want to reuse if it's in good shape. After we've taken the glass out, we put it away for safekeeping and we start working on stripping. Stripping is one of our first phases of our restoration process, and we're removing all lead paint or modern paint from those sashes. We're also taking out any old glazing. If they're wooden sash, we're back to original wood, old growth wood. We've realized that over the course of working with windows over many years, there's a tendency for windows to become unstable. And for that, we do something called stabilization. We're going to stabilize the joinery. These old windows or old sashes are made with full mortise and tenon joints, the highest graded joinery known to carpenters. But there's a tendency for those joints to become unstable over time in the moving sashes. We want to make sure these sashes can move and go up and down, or make sure they do that well and not rack out a square. So in order to strengthen that joinery, we temporarily brace off the sashes so they're square, and then use a hardwood or old growth wooden dowel with 2-part slow cure epoxy to make sure that they'll get stronger at the joint. The other thing we do in the lead room is to start some repairs. Typically, there are some minor things, but we might also uncover some structural issues. And if there's significant structural issues, we do talk to our clients and let them know repairs are essential. These windows have been in their buildings for 60, 80, 100 years, and it is common for them to show some deficits and deficiencies that we take care of as part of our repair process. When we have deteriorated material in the sash, we cut out only that material that's compromised or damaged. And then we'll splice in a new old piece of old growth wood from salvaged windows that we've saved and set aside and cleaned for repair material. Out of respect to the next person who might restore these sashes, instead of using metal fasteners like screws and nails, we'll use glues and epoxies. Instead of using the fasteners to hold them overnight or for the 2-3 days it takes to cure, we'll use clamps. And that's our repair process. Next thing we're going to do is finish sanding. We rough sand all of our sashes in the lead room, and that helps to liberate them from any painted material or glazing compounds or primer material so we can de-lead them. But after we do rough glazing, we take them out and we can do some finish sanding. We go up to 100 grit sanding on our process, and that allows for a nice smooth finish and good paint bonding. But before we do any priming or painting or glazing, we modify the sashes for weather stripping. Some of the old windows that we work in already have been modified for weather strip, and if they were not modified, we'll go ahead and modify them straight up. That process involves setting in a dado edge to the sash, and it also includes modifying the mid-rail. Now that we've done modification of sashes for weather stripping, we've also done some sanding, we've done some repairs and some stabilization and full stripping. Now we're ready to finally prime. And we like to use oil-based primers. We find that it provides good protection and good longevity for those sashes after they're painted. And we typically use 2 coats of oil-based primers to make sure we get good sealing of the wood surface. We have to let all of our prime sashes tack or cure or dry appropriately, and that depends on the material you use, but we follow manufacturer's instructions and depends on the paints. But could be half a day or it could be a day and a half, just depends. And after we've applied one coat and it's dried sufficiently, we'll apply another coat of primer, only after we do light sanding. We sand in between all of our coats of primers and sand in between all of our coats of paint. That gives us a really good finish on our windows, but also makes sure that each coat binds really well to the next. After we've done 2 coats, we go back to our glass that we put away in storage and we do a glass inventory. So we're going to clean that up really well and then hold it up to fluorescent lights in our shops and check it and grade it. Is it old historic or maybe it's new modern sheet glass? If it's old historic, it was hand blown and hand rolled, and that's special. That's very characteristic of old historic homes, is it has historic glass in it that was handmade. And it was difficult to make, so it's variable. It could be variable in thickness and have a lot of waviness or activity, but also have bubbles from the process of a cylinder being rolled. So we're going to grade that glass, and we're also going to evaluate its quality. If it's highly scratched, we might recommend to our clients, hey, this could be a good time to consider swapping it out. It's time to replace. Or do you not mind scratches in your glass, and instead of looking at the scratch, you tend to look for the bubbles and waves? That's fine, but we just want to get some clarity working with you to make sure we put the kind of glass back into your windows that you want. So after we get the inventory done, we send that to you and get clarity of next steps, what to glaze back into your sashes and what not to glaze. Do we need to replace or do we not need to replace? And if we need to replace, what should we use? So we have in our shops replacement glass. Some is salvaged from old windows that we've saved and cleaned it and put away for storage and reuse. But we also have modern reproduction glass that looks like antique. We use a German product called Restover that's imported by a company in New Jersey. We also offer double strength glass. That's 1/8 inch standard glass. If our clients just want a glass without any distinction for certain rooms or for their house, we're happy to use that as well if we need to replace. Glazing is absolutely crucial for energy efficiency. Our intention is to bring these old windows up to equal energy performance compared to a 2-pane replacement window. You can get a modern standard of energy performance in an old window, but it requires a few things. One is really good glazing. The second is good weather stripping. The third is having non-leaky weight pockets. And the fourth is the good storm window. So if we do all those things well, we find that those windows are of equal performance. Glazing always has to cure. Once it's cured, you're allowed to paint. Many of the glazing putties don't require priming, but they do need painting. And the painting will allow us to seal that glazing and make sure it's protected from water and Mother Nature. And then we're ready to paint, and we'll apply 2 coats of finish paint. Again, we'll sand in between coats. And after we've done the finish painting, we're going to restore your old hardware. Typically, it's been painted accidentally, and the painter got away with it and kept painting. And maybe it's been painted 3 or 4, 6 times like your old windows, but we're going to take away all that paint again, just like we did with the sashes, and bring it back to its original metal condition. Typically, it was cast metal or forged, and those are really good metals, real strong. Cast iron, for example, can last for centuries if it's maintained. We'll take it back to its original character and then just oil it to make sure it works well. We leave it for our clients to maintain, and that can mean that they might want to just oil it every 6 months, or they might choose to clear coat it, something equivalent to taking a polyurethane finish to it, or you might use, like old timers use, a lacquer. That's a way you could coat that metal and give it some more lasting durability. But we'll take the metals back to their original luster and just oil them to make sure they work really well for you, and leave it up to our clients to decide how they want to treat it in the future. So if there are missing or broken parts, like a sash lock or a sash lift or a broken pulley, we'll need your help to decide what to replace it with. It could be historic materials, or it could be a modern retailer that deals in architectural reproduction materials. After we've done the hardware, we're going to make some stops. We typically use old growth Doug fir vertical grain material to replace the parting stop, and we'll make an exact match of what the old parting stop was, but without the paint. The boiled linseed oil we use is one of our favorite materials to make sure that the wood pores get sealed up. Now we're almost ready to get back to the house, but before we do go install, we're going to weigh those sashes because these old windows that are double hung used a balanced system of pulleys and weights. And when we go back to the house, we can go into the weight pockets and double check what weights were these windows originally set up with to function properly. If there's a mismatch, we always have extra weights on our van, either old or reproductions, that we can make sure we have a good match. So when we go back to do reinstallation of our historic windows, we're taking the old sashes that are beautifully restored and repaired and ready to go back in. We're taking new sash cord or sash chain, whichever the house was set up with, we try to match that. Or if our clients would like to replace cord with chain, we help them with that. We're also going to bring back new parting stop that we made out of Douglas fir and sanded and oiled. We're taking back their old refinished sash stops that we've cleaned up so they don't have any possibility for creating friction with the window. And we're taking back the old historic hardware. With those things in hand, we're back and ready to go to work and reinstall the historic windows. It took us 4 hours to take an old double hung window out of its opening, but to reinstall it might take another 3.5 to 5 hours to reinstall properly. And now we're ready to turn those sashes over to our clients so that they can use them, and they typically can use them with 1 or 2 fingers. The sash locks works beautifully. The mid-rail areas line up flush so that you can set the sash lock with just your fingers. And if you unlock the sashes, you can use both sashes and enjoy them for another few decades or maybe another lifetime, 60, 80 years, we hope. We're here to save old windows. If you have old windows that are going to the dump, let us know. We'll salvage those windows for glass and wood parts. Also get in touch if you need help saving an old window. We haven't found one we can't repair, so don't give up. If you need help, please contact us.